Well, good morning, everybody. Thanks so much for jumping on. I'm super excited about today. I was going to give everybody a quick market update, but there's a video that came out yesterday. I emailed it or texted it to a lot of you from Matthew Gardner about the state of the economy, and I thought it was very, very powerful. So if any of you didn't get that text with the link to the video with Matthew Gardner, we will send that out. It's coming out on our next newsletter. So if you got invited to this, you'll also get our newsletter that's coming out here shortly, and that'll have the link to that video so you can watch that as well from there. It's a killer video, man. It really breaks down and explains the market, where we're going, why we're where we're at right now, where we're going, and what's going to happen in the future. And it's a very positive outlook for real estate in general. So really powerful. If you're a realtor, you want that information to be able to show it to your clients or promote it to your clients. And if you're a client looking to buy a house or even a homeowner, it's really good to kind of know where the market's heading as well. So that was really powerful. But enough with that stuff. We got to get on to the big event here. We got a guy that's on here with us that's actually my personal coach. I consider him a good friend. We've had some amazing conversations. Quite frankly, the guy's changed my life. And when you get to you're talking to somebody that changes your life, you want to share that with other people around you so that hopefully he can help give you just that little nugget that you need to get to that next level. And that's really what Jimmy Farris is all about, is getting you to that next level, that be a pro and take it up another notch. So without further ado, I've got to introduce my man, Jimmy Farris. Thank you so much, dude, for coming on. I really appreciate this. Super excited to hear what you have to say today. Take it away, my brother.
Man, I appreciate you so much, Jeff, and Sky, and all you guys that helped organize this. Couple things off the top. I'm a little pissed off that I didn't get the cool virtual background of the Miltenberger team. I always seem to get the short end of the stick on these deals, but so you guys get treated to a blank wall in my kitchen. I just, within the last month, moved across the country from Atlanta back to Boise, Idaho. So I'm over on your side of the country now. Really, really happy to be home, back close to my family and everything. It was an amazing move, but I don't quite have my office space set up yet, so you get my kitchen wall. Second thing, I apologize for my voice. I was speaking and attending a conference in Boston over the weekend and caught a little bug. I hope it's nothing super serious. I hope it's not that COVID-19 crap, obviously. Let's hope for that. But so my voice is a little in and out. I apologize for that. Again, super excited to be here because I think right now, everybody in this industry in particular, in the mortgage industry in particular, mortgage real estate, is facing a little bit of adversity, right? Facing some uncertain market conditions, facing some things that sometimes we don't quite know how to navigate, can't control it. Certainly, it's things that are outside of our control, and really things that if we don't get a handle on mentally from our own perspective can cause us to spiral. I've got multiple clients in the industry that are experiencing all different kinds of emotions, all different types of highs and lows, ups and downs, and they're kind of going as the market goes. And so what I want to help you guys with, what I want to give to you today are some strategies and some tools so that you guys can take back control for yourself, that you can put yourself, what I like to call, on the cause side of the cause and effect equation. We're going to get into that here in a second. Let me share my screen and pull up some slides here that I have for you that'll help kind of set some of this off. So ultimately, what we're talking about here is this concept of being a pro. A lot of you guys have heard this before, so I'm not going to go through all the tenets of the Be a Pro platform: prepared, reliable, and obsessed. Those things are all important, but most of the people on this call have been exposed to that. So we're going to dive a little bit deeper into some of the specific aspects of this program and some of the tools that I used, again, as a pro athlete, and some of the world-class elite level athletes that I was around, some of the tools that we use to take back control of situations that sometimes could seem like they were out of our control. This is one of my favorite quotes right here. I actually opened my book with this quote. It's from Jim Rohn. It's this idea that if you want things to get better, you have to get better. A lot of times we'll look around at different things in our work or our personal life, our relationships, and say, well, man, I just wish things would improve. Well, along the lines of what we're going to talk about today, the only thing we can control in most of those scenarios is us and us getting better. It's this idea that when we get better, when we focus, when we take control, everything around us then gets better. That's the only thing that we can control. So I really want to drive that point home as we go through some of these things. I want us to consistently think back to ourselves. How am I looking at things? Am I putting myself on the right side of this equation? A lot of you have seen this before. Some of you have not. This is the cause and effect equation. I love this little tool. We all understand this idea of cause and effect, right? If you jump off a building, you know that there's an effect. If you punch the wall, you put a hole in the wall, there's a cause and there's an effect. But that's not exactly what this little idea is about. That's not exactly what this equation really defines. This is really about putting yourself in control or at cause versus being on the effect side, which is more about victimhood, right? Effect is reasons. These are all the reasons why things are happening, all the reasons why we can't get the job done, all the reasons why we can't lose the weight, why in a down economy or in a market where interest rates are rising and inventory is low. These are all the reasons why. So that effect side represents reasons. The cause side represents results. So which side of this equation are we going to put ourselves on? Which side are we going to try to live on? Are we going to live on the side that puts us at cause? And let me explain this further. Some people take this to mean that everything that's happening in your life right now is your responsibility, or in some cases, your fault. And that's not what this is defining. What this equation means is that regardless of what's happening in your life, it is up to you to determine how you're going to perceive it, how you're going to internalize it. Is something that happens a terrible thing, a bad thing, a good thing, a great thing? Some of you may have heard the Chinese, the parable about the Chinese farmer. And if you haven't, I'm going to go over this really quickly. If you've heard it, then you'll know where I'm going with this. But there was a Chinese farmer and his son who had a stable of horses. One day, one of the horses runs away, and everybody in the town comes to the farmer and says, "Wow, what a terrible thing. Your horse just ran away." And he said, "Well, maybe." The next day, the horse comes back with 6 or 7 other wild horses. Everybody in the town comes and says, "Oh my gosh, you got your horse back, and the horse brought a bunch of horses back with it. What a wonderful thing. Now you have all these horses." The Chinese farmer says, "Well, maybe." The next day, his son is out trying to break some of those wild horses. Any that are familiar with horses, in order to ride a wild horse, you've got to get on its back and try to break it. And a lot of times you get bucked off. That horse doesn't like having something on its back. It's not used to that. So the son gets bucked off and breaks his leg. Everybody in the town comes to the farmer and says, "Oh man, your son got bucked off and broke his leg. What a horrible thing." Farmer says, "Maybe." The next day, the commission officers from the army come through, and they're recruiting all the able-bodied young men to go off to fight in war. And they don't take the farmer's son because he's got the broken leg. All the people in the town come and say, "Wow, how lucky. Your son didn't have to go to war." The farmer says, "Maybe." The moral of the story is that nothing is really good or bad. It's all depends on how we look at it. And that's what this idea of putting ourselves on the cause side of this cause and effect equation is. Let's be honest, markets suck right now. Interest rates suck. Inventory sucks. Is that what you're going to focus on? Or are you going to focus on what can we do? What can we do to empower ourselves, put ourselves in a position to serve our customers better, to do more, to be better? Or are we going to be at effect of interest rates, inventory, etc.? So this idea of putting ourselves on that cause side of the equation really empowers us in situations where we feel like, "Oh, there's nothing I can do. Can't do anything. We just got to wait until the market improves or until interest rates change." Putting ourselves on that cause side puts us in a mindset that says, what are the solutions? What can we do here? How can we navigate this? It empowers us to make the change. Again, if you want things to get better, we have to get better. So that's what this really represents. As we go through this here, if you guys are comfortable, I'd like you to drop in the chat box where you tend to fall in these circumstances. And I want you to be honest. There's no right or wrong answer. All of us are, have some notion of how we look at these things. Do you focus more? Do you tend to focus more on what you have or what you don't have? Just drop that in the chat box. This is that idea of glass half full, glass half empty. I think there's some degree of both of these that are good. I talk a lot about dissatisfaction. Jeff will tell you when we first started coaching together, one of the first things I had him do, one of the first things I have any of my clients do, is identify the areas in your life where you're dissatisfied, where things are not as good as you would want them to be. And I think a degree of dissatisfaction is good. Dissatisfaction has created every great innovation of our time. Somebody's been dissatisfied with the status quo, the way things currently were, and so they work to improve it. And that's how we've got these things like lights and airplanes and cars and electric cars, computers and cell phones. But if we spend too much time focusing on what we don't have, again, we put ourselves in more of a victim, powerless mindset. So where do you fall? Do you tend to focus more on what you have or what you don't have? Next question. We just talked about it. Do you focus more on what you can control or what you can't control? Be honest when you ask yourself these questions. Do we tend to focus more on the things that we can control? When a situation presents itself, is our first inclination to say, okay, what can we do to fix it? What can we do to make it better? What needs to happen to get this moving in the right direction? Or do we just say, well, there's nothing I can do about it. It's outside of my control. There's nothing I can do about it. And last on this, do we tend to focus more on the past, the present, or the future? Hear a lot of people talk a lot about this idea of focusing on the present moment, that the present moment is all you have, that nothing else matters except the present moment. I want to offer a differing view of that. The present moment is important, yes. And the reason why it's so important is because what we do in the present affects our future. It's this idea that the greatest way to predict the future is to create it, right? What we do today has a significant impact on our future and what happens tomorrow. If the present moment was all that mattered, every one of us would go out and empty our bank account, spend every dollar we had because, hey, all we got's the present. All we got's today. So let's live for today. There's no guarantee for tomorrow. Live each day as if it's your last day on earth, right? That I couldn't disagree with that idea more. What we do today is important, yes. It's important in the moment, but it's also important for tomorrow. We lay the foundations for our tomorrows by what we do today in the present moment. So if you're being honest with yourself, do you spend too much time focusing on the past failures, right? Past traumas? Do you spend most of your time focused on the future, wishing for a better future, wishing today away, looking forward to tomorrow, hoping that things change tomorrow, hoping that things are better, hoping that in a few months that the market stabilizes and interest rates go back down so that you guys can go back to work as normal? Or are you focused on today, on the present moment, and what you can do today to set yourself up for that successful future? So do we tend to focus more on what we have or what we don't have? What you can't control or what you can't control, or the past, present, and the future? Ask yourself that question. I see a number. You put responses in the chat box. I appreciate that. Thank you for your openness and vulnerability on that. And like I said, there's no right or wrong. I just tend to feel like there's better in this circumstance. And I believe that if we consistently focus on what we have, on what we can control, and how the present affects the future, then we can improve. We can fulfill the idea of that opening quote, that if we want things to get better, we have to get better. That's how we consistently improve and move in the right direction, regardless of the outside circumstances, regardless of the market, regardless of what's going on in our life, regardless of whether it's raining today or whether it's sunny. When we focus more on what we have, what we can control, and how what we do today in the present will affect our future and create our future, that's when we can consistently improve. So think about how that applies specifically to what you do, to your industry, right? The calls that you're making today, the relationships that you're fostering today. How will that potentially bring you deals down the road? Think about how that applies to your business, how that applies to your life and your relationships. As you guys know, a lot of you guys that have worked with me before know that this isn't just all about business for me. I want everybody that I come in contact with, everybody that I work with, that I speak to, that I coach with, to have a beautiful harmony in life, that your life and your relationships are in harmony with your business, and that everything is continuing to improve and on the up and up. So this isn't just about business. I want you to think about this in terms of your personal life and your relationships and how those things work together. So the question is how, right? How can we make the shift? If we're predisposed to focus on what we don't have, what we can't control, spending too much time in the past, or spending too much time focusing on the future, wishing for better days. If we're on the effect side of that cause and effect equation, if we're letting the circumstances of the world around us and the market and our friends and other people influence us, how can we make this shift over to the cause side of that equation to put us in a mindset where, again, we're focusing on what we have, what we can control, and how the present affects our future? There's one thing, one powerful thing in my mind that makes it all happen, and it's mental toughness. Sure, everybody on this call has heard some definition of mental toughness. You've been exposed to this idea at some point. A lot of people talk about mental toughness and they think about grit and tenacity and perseverance and, just hard work and grinning and bearing it and pushing through. And those are all characteristics to some degree of people who are mentally tough. But my definition of mental toughness is really simple. It's the ability to control your thoughts, feelings, and emotions, particularly under pressure, to get more of what you want. Controlling your thoughts, feelings, and emotions. Do we understand that? That means that rather than reacting emotionally or out of feelings, we have the ability to control those thoughts, feelings, and emotions and respond to life's challenges, to our work challenges, to challenges in our relationships in a way that will facilitate us getting more of what we want. And let's be honest, that's really what life is about, really, right? We really focus on getting the things that we want, not just for us, but for those around us, again, for our career, for our relationships. At the end of the day, we're all trying to get more of the things we want. And we can do that through mental toughness. Let's talk about what I like to call the 3 O's of mental toughness. This idea of objective reality. Again, any of you that have heard me speak before, worked with me before, understand that this idea of objective reality, I think, is one of the bigger pieces of the whole concept of being a pro and mental toughness. We have to be honest about the reality of ourselves and our life. We have to be honest about where we actually are, about big things and small things alike. So many people in this world, in every aspect of life, me included, have a degree of what I like to call delusion about ourselves, about our skills, our abilities, our competencies. A lot of times we think we're better than what we are at what we do. Sometimes it's on the opposite end. We're not objective in terms of thinking that we're not as good at something. We tell ourselves these stories that say, oh, I could never public speak, or I could never do that. I'm just not good at that. And that's not true. That's not the reality. So this idea of objective reality means being honest about where we really, really are. If you think about opening up the Maps app in your iPhone and you want to get directions to go to whatever the destination is. In order for that app to work, it has to be able to identify where you actually are. And you can't lie about that. You can't tell the app that you're a couple blocks over, right? It identifies immediately through GPS where you are. And then, and only then, is it able to track the route to where you want to go. So if we're going to make any shifts, if we're going to make any improvement, if we're going to get better so that things in our life can get better, we got to be honest about where we are and how we're thinking. And that's why I had us go through that little series of questions. And again, I appreciate your honesty on that. But let's be objective about the current state of things, where we are, and what needs to happen moving forward. The second O, open-mindedness. It's shocking. Some of you have probably experienced this. It's shocking how closed-minded we can get sometimes about the way things are, the way they work, what may potentially work, what might not work. I talk about this concept in my book of the suspension of disbelief. A lot of times when presented with a new idea or a new way to do something, our first inclination is to reject it because we don't believe that that thing will be effective or that that's the right way to go. We don't believe that we need to learn anything new, or maybe we need to implement a new technique or a new tactic. We already have our way of doing things. We say to ourselves like, no, I've been doing it this way for years and that won't work. I know what I'm doing. Well, anytime things get a little bit dicey, uncertainty, anytime we meet adversity, oftentimes what got us there was us doing things the way we've always done it. So this idea of being open-minded, suspending your disbelief, is to say that maybe there's a better way. A lot of you guys are familiar with my football background and my football career. When I was a rookie, I made a switch mid-season from the San Francisco 49ers to the New England Patriots. And I literally walked off the practice field on Thursday with the 49ers, got on a plane Thursday night. Friday morning, I was in meetings and then in practice Friday afternoon with the Patriots. And the 49ers system was drastically different from the Patriots system. And I'd spent the last 8 or 10 months learning all of the rules of the 49ers offensive system, the way they wanted us to do things. We had all these hard and fast rules about how you did certain things. So when I got to the Patriots, I was still doing everything the way I'd been taught with the 49ers. The Patriots coaches started asking me about it, questioning me and saying, why are you doing things this way? And I say, oh, this is the way you do it. You know, if you get a 9 route or a go route, you always take an outside release. The Patriots coaches said, that's not how we do things here. We want you to take best release in this case, or do it our way. And my first inclination was to say, you guys are wrong. That's not how this goes. I was just taught by the 49ers that this is the best way to do it. One of the coaches finally said, well, you can either open up your mind and do it our way, or you won't be here. So what do you think I did? I really quickly said, okay, let me give it a try. Let me try it your way. It's what you're asking me to do. And truth is, I found out that some of the ways the Patriots did things were better than what I had been doing in the 49ers. It'd just been so drilled into my head in San Francisco to do things a certain way. But I was forced in that case to open my mind and try something different. I'm asking you to voluntarily think about ways you can do things differently, better, potentially better ways you can approach some of the current problems you're facing. True mental toughness is not being closed-minded and just retreating further into your corner and digging your heels in based on what you believe you know to be true. The mentally tough are able to open their mind, consider other opinions, consider other options, consider other ways of doing things. And the third O, last on this, is this idea of optimism. Optimism is at the very heart of mental toughness. In fact, optimism is the key to mental toughness. People talk about mental toughness mindset. At the very core, at the very center of this idea is optimism. Optimism can be defined very simply: hopefulness and confidence about the future, the successful outcome of something. Anytime we face adversity, anytime we face a little speed bump or a roadblock, optimism is that little voice in the back of your head that says, I can figure it out. It'll work. It's going to be okay. Some of us on this call, most of us at some point in our life have faced massive failures in life, relationships, career. Optimism was, again, that little voice in the back of your head that said, just keep going. Keep going. It'll get better. You'll figure it out. The next one will be your best one. It's this idea that the next play or the next call or the next deal is the most important one, the one that matters, regardless of what happened before. I got asked in a seminar some time ago about how to overcome adversity or failure or obstacles or rejection, right? It's this idea that some people struggle sometimes with overcoming difficult situations. How do you bounce back? How do you get back up? I immediately thought back to when I was 11 or 12 years old in the 5th or the 6th grade, and I was playing flag football up in Lewiston, Idaho, and my dad was one of the assistant coaches. And just about every play, like most kids do, I would look over at my dad to make sure that he was watching. And of course he was one of the coaches, right? So of course he was watching. But as most kids do, I wanted to please my dad. And if I made a bad play, I remember I'd look over at my dad and he'd be going like this: next play, next play. And what he was doing was he was instilling in me this idea that regardless of what happened on the last play, you made a bad play, you messed up, right? You lost the deal. You didn't get the deal. You got to know on the call. Somebody said, we're not going to do business with you. It's this idea of next play. The next play is the only one that matters. And that's truly what optimism is about, that regardless, good, bad, or indifferent, anything that's happened or anything that is happening, it will get better. Tony Robbins has a great way of defining this. He talks about this idea that the treasure is out there, you will find it, and it will be worth it. So the reason why I wanted to emphasize this point about optimism is because with all the uncertainty going on right now in the market, with all the uncertainty around everything that you guys are doing on a day-to-day basis, if we can come in every day with this idea that we'll figure it out, we'll get through it, that the treasure is out there, we will find it and it will be worth it. That little voice that keeps getting us out of bed that says, it's all good, it's going to get better, today's going to be a great day. Regardless of what's going on externally, I'm going to choose to be at cause. I'm going to choose to make this shit happen, not let a bunch of shit happen to me. I'm going to choose to focus on what I can control. I'm going to choose to focus on what I do have: a great job, great relationships, great partners. And I'm going to choose to focus on what I can do today to create my future in the days, weeks, and months ahead. Optimism, hopefulness, and confidence. It's the only way through in any situation. Just so happens that things might be a little difficult right now. They might be tough, but even when they're great, optimism still wins the day. So if you want to insulate yourself from all the external, you want to insulate yourself from all the effects of the outside world, this idea of approaching life, approaching every day, approaching your job, your career, your relationships from a standpoint of optimism and focusing on those things we talked about. That's how you insulate yourself. That's how you build that mental toughness. It says, no matter what, I'm good. No matter what, I can perform. No matter what, I will make it through. No matter what, it's going to be great. We're going to get the deal. Questions?
I think my favorite one is the optimism, man. That last one is really powerful. The next play is the only one that matters. Like, I think a lot of people get into the negativity of a deal falling apart or losing a client. And it's like, you just got to move on to the next one. The next one's right around the corner, as long as you're focused in on that. And right now it's like, we've got a lot of buyers out there that are not able to get into contract because it's so difficult out there. They're falling out of, they're becoming hopeless, because they don't think they can get into contract. So they're really looking at us to provide that hopefulness and that, Alex, stop it. I'm getting private comments here. We got to instill that hopefulness in them. And there was another takeaway that I had over this last weekend. I was at a mastermind with Isaac too, that kind of leads into that, which is, when someone asks you how your day's going, we always say good, right? That's not a response. That's not even a feeling. Good. I'm doing okay, whatever, It was reframed in that mastermind that I was at, is like, tell people how the day is really going. Like, talk about the market. So when your clients say, hey, how are you doing? I'm doing good. How are you doing? I'm doing awesome, man. This market is so freaking killer right now. I think there's a lot of opportunity available. Yes, it's hard to get into a house, but dude, once you get into a house, the appreciation is just crazy right now. And it looks like with all the lack of inventory and everything else, prices are just going to continue to go up. So we just got to strategize, come up with a good plan, and do what we can to get you into a house. But we can't look at this as a negative thing. We just got to look at this as, hey, that one didn't work. Let's move on to the next one, get as aggressive as we can, and eventually you get in there. So I think it's even more important for us right now to push that optimism onto our clients and people around us, to keep them distracted from, the negativity that is out there in the market, and the media especially is terrible.
That's it. And it begs the question, what's the alternative, right? To either have that optimistic mindset or to focus on the negative, scare people away. So yeah, that's why I thought that would be really relevant to present that idea that at the end of the day, we control how we view this stuff, right? That's what we have control over, is how we perceive what's happening. We can't control what is happening, but we can control how we perceive it. And if we can see everything through an optimistic lens, sometimes it might be, people talk about, delusional optimism, call it what it is, but I'm going to choose to see things through the best lens possible and work to create those outcomes and work towards those outcomes. Because again, what we focus on, we tend to feel. So if you're focusing on the negative, you'll feel the negative. If you focus on what you just said, Jeff, the positive in this, then you're going to feel the positive. And I choose to focus on the positive. I choose to focus on that optimism.
Does anyone else on this call have had that conversation? Like your clients feeling negative, or maybe you're a client on the call and you just don't like the market and it's a negative experience right now because of that, and just kind of keep building that negativity rather than, oh my God, we got to stop that. We got to get away from this and go on to the next one. I love the next play is the only one matters. Like, I can't stop thinking about that comment there, because that's so true. It's like that call, no, I'm not interested, or no, I'm stopping shopping right now. The rates are too high, blah, 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 click, and you're like, oh shit, I can either focus in on that thing or move on to the next call, and just keep that positivity though. Like, even in the voice, you could say a positive thing with a negative voice too. Like, you gotta convince your mind that you believe in what you're saying in a positive way. Otherwise, it'll come across immediately as a negative comment, even if you're trying to make it a positive spin.
Exactly. And let me add this too. Years ago, I remember seeing an interview with Kobe Bryant, and the guy that was interviewing him, they were just having a casual conversation. And he said, tell me what the mindset is for a guy like you when you're ice cold, you're 0 for 10, or 2 for 14 from the field. What's the mindset to keep shooting, to keep shooting your shot, so to speak? And he said, the next one's going in. No question. He said, that's every time I shoot the ball, it's with the understanding that it's going in. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But I'm running back up and down the court thinking the next one is going in. Think about how you can apply that. Like you said, you make a call, get a no, get a rejection. Cool, no problem. The next call will be the one. That's that, seeing that through that optimistic lens.
Scott, you had something?
We actually have another question, then I can go over here.
Actually, it's not a question. My favorite subject is when you talk about the open-mindedness, which I like about, is that it's very inspiring, which keeps your option available if you see what kind of house or condo that's going to work very well, or how many rooms that it has. And also you just be open-minded to what kind of areas that you're interested in, and also which affordability is available. Just keep your if things didn't work out, you just keep your options available, just to make sure what's coming up in a good path. That way it can just go forward. You can just go forward with the choices that you made in a healthier path.
Yes, I love that you said that. So that idea of open-mindedness is just comes down to so often we get stuck in these cycles of, well, this is the way we've always done it. This is the way it's always been. Anytime X happens, we've always done Y. And sometimes, especially when there's a lot of external factors that are shaking things up, it's very helpful to take off that hat that you've typically worn and put on another one. Think of it differently. Think about the problem differently. Think about some possible solutions or possible ways through the problem that typically you don't think about. The ability to just continue to have an open mind. It sounds really simple, right? It's cliche. Yes, keep your mind open. Truly powerful, truly a powerful technique when we're up against something that we're like, gosh, man, this can't figure this out. This is really difficult. Well, think about it from a different perspective. Allow yourself to try something different than what you've always done. And a lot of times the solution appears. So thank you for that. I appreciate that.
So I wanted to get your take, kind of going back to mental toughness, talking about something a little more intense than just like losing a deal, right? Because I think a lot of people might be going through something. Maybe it's loss of relationship, death in the family, financial distress. What is your take on like when you can't control your emotions because those emotions are like grief, or, you know, it's really like you're kind of drowning?
Yep.
What are those steps to take to kind of apply mental toughness to a really, really hard situation?
So one thing I always recommend is to feel everything. I'm a big advocate of feeling the emotions, right? Allowing yourself to feel the grief, allowing yourself to feel the heartbreak or to feel the letdown. How it's going to affect you in terms of what you do moving forward is the part where you can take control of it, right? Notice I didn't say the definition of mental toughness isn't to block out your thoughts, feelings, and emotions. It's to put yourself again on the cause side of that equation and be able to control some of those things. And part of being able to control it is to validate them and say, wow, I'm heartbroken. I'm incredibly sad. I'm filled with unbelievable grief, or even something more simple. I'm just down about the current state of things. I'm feeling some anxiety or some depression, right? The way that you can put yourself in control of those is to, like I said, acknowledge them, validate them, and then plot a course moving forward that empowers you to move in the direction that you want to move in, rather than allowing the thought, the feeling, or the emotion to push you in all different directions. Because at the end of the day, like that mindset that, hey, things are going to happen to me. Things are going to affect me. I'm going to feel certain emotions. accepting that reality, but then saying, but I'm in control of this shit. I'm in control of me. You know, it's that idea that nobody can make you mad. Nobody can make you sad. You can choose to let what they're saying to you anger you, or you can just brush it off, right? And that's obviously on the lighter side of that, away from, you know, the grief and the heartbreak. But in all scenarios, you can accept it, validate it, acknowledge that those feelings are real, feel them, and then decide how you want to move forward. And controlling it to me means that while I'm feeling those things, I'm not going to let those things cause me to act outside of my character or to push me in directions that I don't want to go in. I hope that helps.
I love that. Ooh, we have a question in the chat.
Okay.
Can you give a personal example applying this, the low and the breakthrough?
Say it one more time.
Do you have an example maybe from your own perspective of your life where you were able to apply that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So, I mean, couple of examples. So when I retired from football, I hit probably my all-time low, right? I thought I was this guy that was just immune to depression and sadness and anxiety and all those type of things. And when my football career was over, I felt like my identity had just been stripped away. I hit the lowest of all lows. And I kept saying to myself, well, you know, I guess that's it for me. Guess I got to do one cool thing and maybe I'll never do anything cool again in my life because boom, boom, boom. I don't have, right? I was saying, I don't have any skills in the workplace to go get another cool job. I don't have any experience working for a company. I don't have. And what I realized was that if I started looking kind of to the point, which is why I'm so big on this, what I did have, I had a mindset, a discipline, a work ethic, a level of commitment. I'd proven to myself that if I committed to something I was passionate about, I could go to the very top of it. Proven to myself that if I worked consistently at something, I could become really, really good at it. Once I made that shift after my retirement, I immediately, you guys, Sky, you've read the book, you've read this section of the book, immediately took back off, moving towards something that I wanted to do, moving towards a new career, moving towards something that was compelling and empowering for me. And I employ that every single day. Anytime I come up against some type of adversity, some type of roadblock or what looks like a stop sign, I immediately start to think about, well, what do I have, right? What can I control in this situation? And what am I going to do about it today to make it what I want it to be in the future? And one of the things I love about all the stuff we talked about today is that, and I don't say this like false humility, none of this stuff is overly profound or earth-shattering, right? I think a lot of times people get caught up in all this new psychology and neuroscience and all this stuff, hack your brain to think X, Y, and Z. This is really basic, rudimentary stuff that if we master it and we actually put this stuff into practice and apply this in our daily lives, can have the profound effect. I read a quote once in a book that complexity is the enemy of execution. And that's why I'm on a mission to simplify some of these principles down to the most basic elements for myself and for you guys or anybody that I talk to. We're talking about really simple, basic principles, taking control of your situation, having the right optimistic mindset, knowing that it's up to you to perceive any situation the way you want to perceive it. And the reason why that's important is because often in hindsight, we see it for what it really was, right? Some of us have gone through breakups or failed relationships. And in the moment, it's the worst thing that's ever happened. A year or 2 years later, what do we often say? Wow, you know what? I'm so glad that happened because through that heartbreak, I grew in these ways and ended up meeting the love of my life or ended up you lose a job or you get fired or something goes wrong with this career. And then 2 years later, you're doing something amazing that you love. And you're like, thank God I got fired from that job. Because now I'm doing something that I really want to be doing. I'm really in purpose or in passion. You know, I love, it's like that old Garth Brooks song. Some of you guys that are my age and Jeff's age will probably remember that. Garth Brooks had that song, Thank God. I don't remember the title of it, but I thank God for unanswered prayers, right? Most of the time, only in hindsight are we able to see the good in negative or adverse situations. What I'm challenging you to do is to have the perspective now in the moment to see the good through a lens of optimism. Anybody else? Comments, questions?
Amazing.
I have one more comment on that for the agents on there specifically. Like, you know, some of the things for change too, being open-minded and stuff, is we're always constantly, you know, trying to find new ways to do this. And as it's changed, the market's definitely changed for us as well. Like our volume's down, and, you know, it's scary, but it's actually, instead of like, oh my God, what are we going to do? The sky's falling. You know, we're looking into other states. Like, hey, how do we get business in other states? Hey, what do we need to do to even up our game even further on getting our offers accepted? So we rolled out a $10,000 closing on time guarantee. We rolled out a 21-day close, you know, things like that. We're trying to get as creative as we can to not only help the clients we already have get into contract, but also attract new clients on top of it, clients that we may not have gotten in the first place because we weren't offering those specific things before, and trying to get better and better. And just looking at all the opportunities instead of being scared, closed-minded, and just being like the effect person, you know, oh my God, this market sucks. My income's down. I don't know how I'm going to do this, blah, blah, blah. It's like, hey, where's the positive in this? We got to go into other markets. We got to do this. We got to do that. So, you know, open up your mind about what's going on right now in the market, how it's affecting you, and say, what can I do differently to set myself apart to either get more clients, or, you know, what am I doing wrong on closing? Talk to other people, get new ideas. Like, how do you get that deal accepted? What did that look like? And now you've got a new piece of knowledge that you can use to help your clients as well.
Yes. I love that, Jeff. You just hit the nail on the head. And I hope everybody heard that. So important. And so I
have a question. How do you deal with burnout and not just, you know, it's like, God, I've been doing it. I'm racking my head. But I'm burned out. I'm just burned out. So how do you address?
Yeah. So a lot of times burnout, in this is just my opinion, right? Burnout is a function of overwhelm. And actually, great question, because it leads right into kind of what I want, the final thought I wanted to leave you guys with. A lot of times when we get burnt out, it's because there's so much, and we get that overwhelm, and we're working so hard at multiple things. We feel like we're burning the candle at both ends. We feel like we're trying to constantly put out fires. Jeff's favorite term is whack-a-mole, right? Just constantly, you know, you whack one down, another one pops up, right? Putting out fires. In my opinion, the way you deal when you start feeling burnout, you start feeling overwhelmed, is to focus on the 1, 2, maybe 3 things that need to go right. The 1 or 2 things that are the most important, the 1 or 2 things that need the most focus. I tell this story about way back in 2003, which is way back now. It's almost 20 years ago. I was playing for the Falcons. And in 2002, we'd had a great season. We'd come off a great season. We went deep into the playoffs, and there was a lot of anticipation about us being one of the top teams in the NFC in 2003. In the second preseason game of the year, quarterback by the name of Michael Vick. Some of you guys might remember him. If you don't need the context around it. But Michael Vick was at the time an international superstar, similar to like LeBron James right now in the NBA. And Vick breaks his leg in the second preseason game, and he's out for what seems probably like the whole year, right? So automatically all of the air just goes out of our balloon. We ended up winning our first regular season game of the year, and then we lost 9 games in a row. And this is a team that was picked by some people to go to the Super Bowl. With Mike Vick as our leader, we had all the pieces in place. We're going to potentially make a run at the Super Bowl. Mike gets hurt. We win our first game. Somehow we got lucky and won the first game. Then we lost 9 games in a row. So we're 1-9 at one point in that season. And we had a team meeting just amongst the guys and said, what do we need to do to get this thing turned around? Because this is not the season that any of us projected to have. And all of the talk in the locker room and in the media was, man, we just need to wait for Mike to get back, man. If Mike can get healthy and get back, then we'll get the season back on track. Once Mike gets back, everything will be okay, right? So an external factor, once interest rates change or improve or go back down, once the market changes, everything will be okay, right? That was us. And once we get Mike back, we'll be fine. We had a meeting amongst all the guys and said, what do we need to do to get this thing turned around? And what we decided essentially was on 2 or 3 things that we needed to focus on. One of them was we needed to run the ball well. Okay. Mike was our quarterback, threw the ball really well. We didn't have him. Our backup quarterbacks were not good. So we put the emphasis on our running game, run the ball well. And then on defense, we need to stop giving up big plays. Stop giving up these long touchdowns and these big plays. We went on to win 4 of our last 5 games. Mike did end up coming back and he played really well, but because we'd already as a team figured out the 1 or 2 things that we needed to do to get it back on track. We won 2 or 3 games. Mike comes back. We win 3 in a row. The point is focusing on those 1 or 2 things that need to go right, that need to get done, that you need to do. And to address your question, Mary, I think it pertains to burnout. What are the 1 or 2 things? Because unless you're saying you're going to throw in the towel, which I don't think is what you're saying. What are the 1 or 2 things on a daily basis that need to happen? Forget all the overwhelm, all of the exterior stuff that's coming at you. What are the 1 or 2 things that you need to focus on, that need to go right on that day, that need to go well on that day? And focus your energy on those and doing those to the best of your ability. And as Jeff and Sky and a lot of my coaching clients have heard me say, do that consistently day in and day out and just keep stringing those days together. And soon enough, you'll find yourself coming out of that feeling of burnout and overwhelm. You'll get some momentum, some positive momentum, and things will start to happen. And then it won't feel like this uphill climb. You'll feel things level off a little bit. And then sometimes you'll feel like, man, I feel like I'm going downhill in a good way, like I'm coasting, like it's not a struggle. By just focusing on the 1 or 2 things that need to happen, that need to go right, that need most of your energy and your attention on a given day. So I hope that helps. Sorry for that long story, but I wanted to close with that because I think it's important to understand that that's the thing that we can control. Everyone on this call is, what are those 1 or 2 things that need to go right, seeing it through an optimistic lens and moving forward with that.